And here we are. Welcome everybody to our SEPTA kickoff event of organizing your IEP and 504 binder. We are delighted to have you here. I'm Michelle Cades. I'm the current president of Fairfax County SEPTA, and we are a countywide PTA for all of Fairfax County, representing parents and teachers, as well as other community members who are interested in supporting the special education community. And to everybody, we made it. School starts next week, and it's been a really long summer, I know, for me. So I'm delighted that school is starting. At the same time, it's also a little nerve-wracking. So we're really glad that you've come to join us tonight. I wanted to encourage everybody to please join SEPTA. On your screen, you should see the link to our membership hub, and our dues are $20 a year, but they are $6 for FCPS staff. So feel free to get back to school gifts for your favorite case managers if you'd so desire. You can also connect with SEPTA on Facebook. We have a page, and then we also have a group, which is where most of the chatting goes on. So feel free to hook in with both of those. And we are always looking for more volunteers, and we welcome you to get involved with SEPTA. So feel free to message us and jump in and lend a hand. We are also going to have a giveaway tonight. We are going to randomly choose 2 lucky winners, and we will email you if you win. We have, for the organization night, 2 really big 3-ring binders with the business card insert and a set of fancy dividers that have pockets in them that are very awesome. So stay tuned to your email in case you end up winning. And I am now delighted to introduce you to our 2 main presenters this evening. We have Amanda Campbell, who is currently our SEPTA Vice President, and Diane Cooper-Gould, who is our Advocacy Chair. I will be monitoring our YouTube stream where you are hopefully watching, and I'll be monitoring the chat for that as well. So I look forward to chatting with you a little bit later. Thanks.
So hi, everyone. I'm Diane Cooper-Gould, and I am the Advocacy Chair currently for the upcoming year for SEPTA, and we're super excited to be here today. This is a presentation that Amanda and I did actually about a year ago, and yeah, you can see us all now. So, which went over really like gangbusters. We had so much fun, and actually some of the people who came to that event are now on our board. So you too can join SEPTA and be part of the team. So anyway, just a little bit about me. I have been involved with SEPTA since the beginning and was one of the founding members and co-founders of SEPTA. And I have 2 kids with IEPs in Fairfax County Public Schools. And now I am going to throw it over to the amazing Amanda Campbell. And it's a real treat today because she gets to actually speak this time. The first time we presented this, she didn't have a voice. So she was actually using an assistive communication device of her daughter. So yay, we get to hear Amanda's voice today.
Yes, hi, thank you for that introduction. And I am very actually thrilled that I can talk this time because last time that was really rough. So as Diane said, my name is Amanda Campbell. I am the Vice President of SEPTA this year. This is my 3rd year on the board, I think. Yep. Yeah, 3rd year on the board. I was Communications Chair for the past couple of years. My daughter has a rare genetic disorder that about 250 people in the world have, and comes with some global developmental delays and apraxia of speech, which is why she uses an AAC device, an alternative and augmentative communication device, to speak. So she entered the county when we went into Child Find Preschool at 3. So we've been in the system for a couple of years. We did infant and toddler connection before that. So we've got some experience with the transitions between those levels at least. Diane's much more the expert on secondary than I am. But I am excited to be here and to be able to share what we have been finding helps us in our IEP meetings and just keeping everything organized.
I guess I should jump in. I was supposed to give everyone an overview of what we're doing tonight. So Tonight, obviously, we're going to give you the presentation about how to build your IEP binder or your 504 binder for your child, and how to keep your records organized, because I would say that's probably, as a parent, one of the most overwhelming things in terms of organization for me personally to deal with, is the massive volume of papers and reports and emails and all of the communication that you have to do with your child's team, whether it be the school team or your medical providers or your private therapists or what have you. So today we're going to reference IEP binders a lot. However, if you have a child with a 504, please don't feel excluded. You can substitute 504 in your head and you might have slightly different paperwork, but the concept is the same. You keep it all together in a giant binder, and that binder will become your best friend for the rest of the school year. So we're going to start, oh, and at the end of the presentation, Michelle Cades and I are going to jump on and do some helpful hints. And those are going to be IEP helpful hints that are before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. And then we're also going to give you some helpful tips for this COVID-19 2020 crazy fall virtual world that we're in. So that'll be at the end of the presentation. And now I'm going to let Amanda take it away with the first slide.
All right, thank you, Diane. Let me get the screen share going. Please bear with us today, guys. This is the first time that we have attempted to live stream a presentation while we are here. So I am hoping this is gonna work. All right, you guys should be seeing our first slide, binder materials recommended. A 3-inch D-ring binder is one. I actually have my supplies next to me. You can might be able to see. I do actually recommend a full 3-inch binder, and you will see why in a little bit. So that,
Amanda,
and then
I'm going to jump in here. It's Michelle. We did have a question of what is a 504? So that is probably a good thing for us to introduce. Thank you very much for that. Also, we do not have a Spanish translation tonight, but Erica, if you can drop us an email, I can see if we can coordinate with getting some translation afterwards for you.
Yes, and we do not have ASL translation tonight either. However, we will look to do that in future events. The video will have captioning on it when we post the recording to YouTube. Diane, do you want to take the question about 504s before we move on?
Yeah, so the 504 is another type of disability plan for students with disabilities. It refers to the Section 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. An IEP binder is a little bit, I guess you would say, a little bit more involved than a 504 plan, an IEP plan. And the IEP is really saying that you need accommodations, services, and somehow not just accommodations, but you need services and change of instruction in order to have access to an education, versus a 504, which is mostly focused on, in broad strokes, accommodations, but not necessarily specific special services or instruction. So that gives you a general idea of the difference. There's a slightly different process, but if you have questions about that, you can come to us at another time. You can look them up online, or you can talk to your special education department at your school.
And I'm also going to share in the chat a link to a good website that explains the difference as well.
All right, then back to the slideshow, and there, we will have a spot for more questions as we move forward. We will take a break in between the tips and the organization so that we can take some more questions then. All right, so we covered the 3-inch binder. Tabs, also highly recommended. Poly tabs help because they're a little bit more sturdy, and with how often you access the binder, it's helpful to make sure it doesn't fall apart. So I've got 8-inch, or the 8-tab plastic poly multicolored ones. Some people also use a business card holder. You can see it here. I don't personally have that, but it's helpful. and a 3-hole punch that you can actually have in the binder because all of the paperwork comes without being punched. So that is the basic binder. I'm going to move on to some other, let me see if I can make that work. Okay, so some optional ones, you can see having like the pouch to keep your pens and stuff so you don't not always, you know, looking around for a pen or pencil during the meeting. Reinforcement labels, those are the little things that we used to use in high school when our stuff wouldn't stay, when the 3 holes get broken. That'll help keep the information in. This little triangle thing in the middle, that is a sheet lifter. We actually had a couple questions before the event as to what a sheet lifter was. And that's this little thing, and it will help you turn the pages in the binder without stuff getting stuck. Sheet protectors can also help with that as well. A small one subject notebook can be helpful for keeping notes during the meetings and having that all stay together. You'll also see that we've got on here these tabs and these sticky notes. You can use either. I personally use sticky notes, and this is part of my IEP meeting preparation. I go through the IEP. Each of the different rainbow colors has a different part of the IEP. So I will have a different color for goals, a different color for measurability, a different color for plop, and along down the line, so that I can keep track of what it is I want to ask a question about, or what it is I want to make a comment about. So if there's an addition I want to make to the plop, I'll choose the plop color, make my little note, and then I know in the meeting when I'm turning through the draft what it is that I want to focus on with that page or with that goal. I found that after a special ed conference presentation that used post-it notes, and actually found it really helpful. So I hope that that helps you. Diane, I think you use a similar system with the tabs. Is that right?
Yeah, I have to unmute myself here. So I do a little bit of a similar thing. I use the sticky tabs that you attach to the side of the page, just like if you were going to sign a document, and they kind of have an arrow that shows you where on the page. And I like to get the really bright ones that are large enough that I can write on the edge a keyword for myself. But the other thing I do with the IEP, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we go through IEPs and do our IEP prep when we show you our binders. But one thing that I do is a little different from Amanda, is rather than use different color sticky notes, I pretty much have the same color tabs along the side that just points me to the page I want to go to, because I don't necessarily want to leaf through that everything. But then what I do is I'm a big fan of highlighters. So I use highlighters are a big supply, and I have my highlighters in different colors that I highlight in, and then the color of the highlighter might give me an indication of what it is that I'm talking about. Like, this is a problem, or this is really good, depending on the color of the highlighter. And then I'll write a note at the bottom of the page. Usually at the bottom of each page of the IEP, there's some blank space there, and that's where I write my explicit comments. Question about this goal, what does this mean? Can we add this? I love this. Whatever the note is, I write on the individual page where I've got the tabs. So just slightly different. What you're going to find is what works best for you and yourself. So that's all. Am I next? Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Let me see. Next slide is, I don't know if you can get it up on the screen there, Amanda. Templates for your binders. Let's see that on my screen. Is that on everyone's screen?
Okay, sorry. My computer decided to go like crazy. I was trying to unmute and move things and it wouldn't let me. Sorry. Here we go.
There we go. Wonderful. Okay, so this slide is about templates for your IEP binder. So one thing that we have over time worked with different workshops and specialists and ourselves, and it found that there are certain pre-printed pages that can be very, very helpful to keep at the front of your IEP binder to organize critical information that you need to reference frequently. So the first one of those is called a communication log. And all of these templates, as well as the helpful tips and a couple other templates that aren't actually listed, are going to be all on our website. Is that correct, Amanda? They're going to be on our website, and we're going to publish a link.
They are on our website currently. The email that you all should have gotten from Eventbrite about 15 minutes before the start of the event tonight will have had a link to it. There is also a link in the description of the YouTube video that you see. And we will make sure that that gets shared on our social media after the event with the recording as well.
Perfect. So there's going to be a link that you can access many different ways, as Amanda just described. And when you go to that link, it's going to have all of these documents there for you to download and print and then put into your binder after you use your whole bunch. The first one is a communication log. The communication log is basically where you have in columns the date, who you spoke to, through what medium, meaning did you call them on the phone, did you do an email, did you talk in person, like that, and then the subject that you discussed. And the communication log is really, really critical. It's probably one of the best things you can do to create an ongoing record of your communications with the school. And that is not only very useful for reference, but it's also really useful as you move forward. If for some reason there is a question of something that happened historically, or if you're trying to remember when something took place, you can go back to that log and have a really simple record. I'll say here's something that I do a little differently. So we're sharing the pre-printed log pages, which are fantastic. What I tend to do personally is have a 3-ring spiral notebook. So in lieu of putting a bunch of communication logs in my kids' IEP binders, I do a single subject, so it's real thin, spiral notebook. And I found that I personally like that because I can take it out of the binder and carry it around with me, so that if I am communicating on the phone, but I'm not necessarily with my binder, I can write it in and then put it back in the binder later. So it just depends on what you find works best for you. The next form we're going to talk about is the medical provider information. And I don't know, you know what, I'm going to ask real quick, Amanda, is there any way to pull these up and show them? Oh, right here, you have one up here. But I can't see it all the way because of my computer settings.
I am trying to pull them all up.
Got it. So I can see that. So you can see that Amanda's sharing what a communication log looks like right now. So that's perfect. And the next one is going to be the medical provider information. Do you have that form? I think I'll talk a little bit and Amanda will try to find that and see if she can share it on her screen. The medical provider information is pretty self-explanatory. It would be all of your child's different medical providers, therapists, insurance information, all together. And you'll find if your child does have a lot of different medical needs, this can be extremely helpful. Yes, they'll be in your phone most likely, but for very quick reference and to also be able to make copies of that information and distribute it to either caregivers or staff that might need to have it. It's just really, really convenient to have that medical provider form. And awesome, thank you, Amanda. It's just right now, you can see what it looks like there. Again, I'm limited on my computer of how much I can see, but you can see it has the name, obviously the specialty, the address, the fax number, etc. Now, something that I do, Amanda did mention that a business card holder was something some people use. A business card holder is something that I personally love. I feel like I collect business cards all the time, especially from people like doctors and therapists and specialists. So one thing I do is I have the business card holder right up towards the front with all of these other things. And a lot of times the doctor's cards will go in there, or therapists or whatever as well. So that's another way to track your provider information. Okay.
I will say one other thing, Diane. I started doing this right at the very beginning when my daughter's diagnosis was coming forward. A family member who's a special education teacher recommended this to me, actually keeping a second binder that has duplicates of any medical reports that the school may need to share, so that if you need to share it with the school, you have it on hand to share during the meeting. I haven't relied on that as much as we've gotten further away from the constant medical appointments and reports. But for those who are in that space, that can be really helpful.
Well, that's a very great idea. I love that. So yeah, having a second binder. Obviously, for all of us in this day and time, we need to have our own printers and copiers. So that kind of goes without saying. With all of these papers, there will be copies made. Okay, we're going to move on to the parent tracking form. So the parent tracking form is an interesting one, and we're lucky to have Sherry Belkowitz of Belkowitz Law. She's actually on our board now. She has graciously shared some of the forms that her company uses, because it's in a great format and template. And so you will see, were we able to get it up there? Not yet. Okay. You will see her company's this, which is a really interesting idea, which I hadn't actually thought about before personally, which is you can write down, especially during COVID-19, which is what this is. We're spending a lot of time with our kids, but it would be good for every time, is a specific skill set. Is it academic? Is it physical, for physical therapy? Is it medical? What the current level of skill is, what sort of therapy or practice you've done to work on that, and then the outcome of how your child's have grown, or how they've changed since you've been giving them an intervention at home. And so it's a really kind of a neat idea, which here we go. You can see that now. It shows behavior goals, fine motor, gross motor, academic goals. So I just think that's a really neat, handy one that I might need to actually print off and put in my binder now, because I've never seen that one before. So that's a cool new one. And then we'll move on to the services record. And that's a services record during COVID-19. So this is very helpful, and it will be helpful as we move forward after this first quarter, when everyone's being reassessed for, has your child regressed? If they have regressed, how far have they regressed? And what services did they have, and what services did they not have over that period of time? So you can really link the services that your child is receiving to whether or not they are plateaued, whether or not they have made progress, whether or not they have regressed. And additionally, it'll help you just keep an eye and know what has been going on during COVID, because everything is such a different model, and it's so, services are changing. There's a lot of IEP addendums. So, just to try to keep everything straight between what is in school versus this virtual time period, and be able to really take some ongoing data that you can analyze at a later date.
Diane, just a heads up, your voice is going in and out a little bit.
Oh gosh, okay. Does it help if I'm closer to the camera?
Yes,
okay,
I think.
Apologize. Let me know in the chat if you can't hear me.
Yeah, it's still kind of breaking up a little bit.
Uh-oh. I've never had that problem before. Okay. It's I'm not sure how to fix that.
If your mic is on your wire, it could just be that it needs.
It's not on my wire. That's what I was just checking. Actually.
Oh, there, it's better right there.
Oh, maybe that is the mic.
There you go.
Oh,
Thank
this
you.
Crazy technology. Okay.
Much better. Thank you.
Thank
Excellent.
You. Just hold this by my mouth. Okay, so Michelle, let me know if it goes out again, and I will happily do what I can to fix that. Okay, so the last one was the services record. Just explain that.
It's still going a little in and out. Sorry.
Oh, then I don't think that is what it is.
There, when you, just like that. I don't know what you're doing, but.
I will try not to move again.
Don't move.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Thank you.
Technology. Okay, so we did that. I think we're ready to move on from the templates, and we're ready to move on to Amanda. She's going to show us her binder.
We have one more template, Diane, the education timeline. I am sharing it now.
Why don't you go ahead and present that, Amanda?
Okay.
I'm going to fiddle with my audio.
Okay. Not a problem. So this was another one that Sherry was kind enough to share with us. And this is for keeping track of your evaluation timelines, your IEPs. So to keep track of the paperwork side and everything that has specific timelines within IDEA. So you would put the date in here of, when you requested an evaluation, and then you can track then the date of when you actually had the evaluation to make sure it's happening within the same timeline, within the correct timeline. And then you can also put in the date of your IEP, whether or not you signed it, and whether you signed it in partial consent, in full consent, or whether you declined. So this is a nice way to have it, add all that information at a glance. And this is one of those things we're about to talk about, what you can bring through from year to year. And this is a document that can kind of help you organize that and bring some of that information through year to year without bringing a ton of paperwork along with you. I'm going to stop the share at this point and go back to our slides. And it should now be showing the slides, I hope. There's a little bit of the delay because my computer is doing a lot of things running on two screens at once. So, okay, so it is binder presentation time. So this is, I'm going to hold it up as best that I can. As you can see, it is a full 3-inch binder. This is 1 year worth of paperwork. This is my daughter's 2nd grade year. And we really only had like the annual before, going into 2nd grade, and the annual in the spring just before COVID hit. So it's not like this is a ton of meetings or anything. This is, yeah. So highly recommend the 3-inch binder. My personal tabs, you probably can't see, but that's okay. I start off with the school information, which is where I'll store everything that comes from the school. So any scheduling for the classroom, any documentation that I get at back to school night or the open houses, obviously that's all virtual right now, but this is where I will store any of that. The next one I have is the current IEP, because I always want to make sure that I keep that at the front as much as possible, so it's easy to access. And then I believe after that is evaluations. We just had, last year was a reevaluation year for her, so we do have more in the way of evaluations than we usually do. Progress reports and I also will add in here, you see I've got some things in the front pocket. We recommend the tabs with the pockets for some of this. So in the progress reports, if Sarah's teachers send home any work that I feel like really speaks to a goal or something that I really want to highlight or remember, I just kind of tuck it in here for future reference, along with the rest of the progress report information. Then I have my communication log. I do actually do the handwritten thing. I don't do it for everything. My emails aren't on here, but I do try to keep track of phone calls, especially. Then I've got the medical information for all of her providers, both through the school and privately.
Amanda.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. Could
No.
you switch your screen view so that
so that
you are
I'm
big, so everybody
Yes.
can see your stuff better? Thanks.
I can. Thank
Great.
you for that update, and I will go back and go quickly through.
And if you can even just put it on just the speaker.
Yes,
highlighted.
I am going to spotlight my video so you're seeing.
There you go. Beautiful. Thank you.
Sorry, everybody. Okay, so this is the front of my binder. I'll get to that in a minute, but just as a quick review now that I'm big, I've got school info, and then the current IEP, evaluations, progress reports is the next one, and this is where I keep samples of her work. Then I've got the communication log. There's no identifying information on this, so if you can read anything, So be it. It's just where I keep track of phone calls. And then the medical information, that does have identifying, so I'm just going to skip. And then I go into the parent rights and any research that I have. That's what my tab is called, parent rights and research. So I've got a copy in here. If you can see, these blue things are the tabs that I've used to remind myself of important places in that purple video ebook. This is a printout of it. So I've tabbed that for references as needed. But this is also where I will keep research that I come across at special ed conferences or AAC, the RATE conference that Assistive Technology did last year. I've got some presentations in here from that. Things that I know that I'm going to want to reference at some point, and I want to make sure I don't lose, and that are directly related to services Sarah receives or her AAC, something along those lines. And then at the very back, I've got old IEPs, and you can see my little Post-its from the last time we did this. So that is my binder. Going back to the front for a minute, the cover is actually like, it sounds and it looks kind of frivolous. I get it, but I've actually found this to be a really important thing. This is pictures of my daughter. And every year, this is a tip I think I got from maybe my ITC case manager, I can't remember. But I've really found that it helps not just to center me in the meeting about what is the most important thing, but it also helps to kind of bring a focus on Sarah for everybody else in the room. Obviously, when we're virtual, it's a little bit different. But I have brought it into meetings and gotten comments on it from central office staff when we've had meetings with them, or just her teachers too. Like, it really just helps to bring the focus back to why are we here? What is most important here? And it's all about Sarah. So and it also helps calm me down a little bit sometimes when I just need to recenter. Okay, here. We're good. Okay. So I want to pass that tip on because, one, it's pretty, but two, it's also really functional for being in the meeting.
Amanda,
yes.
While you have your tabs there, would you please repeat what was on tab 7?
Tab 7. All right, I will just run through them one more time because I'm not really sure how many I have in here.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to do mic, but there's also a slide that has all of your tab sections on it.
That is a good point.
So that might be a good idea.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to start sharing that one more time. Let's see if we can get this up. And there we go. So that is my sections written out. We've got another slide for Diane's section. She's going to go through her organization here in just a minute. So I'm going to turn the mic back over to Diane.
Okay, as I said, I've got a new mic going, so hopefully this one will work. If not, please let Michelle know, and Michelle can ping me again in our chat. Okay, so with my binder, I think my kids, I can't remember how many years we've been doing this now. 13, I think. We first entered the system when my oldest was 2 and he's 15. So that would be higher math. That would be 13 years we've been doing this. And I would say that my binder over the years has changed a lot. So I actually have 2 binders and I'll kind of go through how they've been different from year to year. Because the big thing is, you know, obviously we're showing you a template of what you can do, but your binder does not have to be exactly what Amanda does, or it doesn't have to be exactly what I do. You'll find over time what really works best for you. So I'm going to quickly go through my tab section, and then I'll show you what I have. We can make me big and we'll show you what I have. And you will be able to get a copy of these slides, I believe. Is that right? Will we be able to send a copy of the PowerPoint out as well, or at least have a link to it? Okay. So right now we're seeing Amanda's face. I don't know, Amanda, if you can go back to Diane's tab section slide in the PowerPoint. Oh, now we see my face, which is fine. Is it possible to get the tab sections rolling? that slide? Okay. Well, I'm just going to shoot. I'm just going to start talking, and if in a few minutes we can get that slide up, we will. So
you want to be big for anything, Diane?
I figured I'd go through the slides really quickly and then be
Okay.
big to show my binders, if that works. Thank you. All right. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so in general, this is the format and the order that I start in. I start with the communication log. And again, as I said, for me, that's a skinny spiral notebook. So I have that in the very front so that I can both clip it and unclip it out of the 3 rings easily. Next, I go to my business card holder, and that's so that right in the front, if I need easy access to anyone I'm trying to reach or a service provider, I can just flip through it really quickly right in the front. School contacts, keep them right in the front. So that's just a tracking list of all the people. And I don't think that this was a form that a template form that we put in there. So this is something that I do. I do a page where I, just similar to medical contacts, I write down the name of the case manager that year, the special education teachers that year, any related service provider that year. Now my kids are in secondary school, so each teacher and how to get in contact with them. That might be an email or a phone number, or however they prefer to be contacted. And I keep that all together at the very front so that I can reference it quickly and easily. Then the next tab would be the current IEP. So I keep the most recent IEP in the very front. And what I like to use for the current IEP are the plastic sheet protectors. And I slide the whole thing in a plastic sheet protector rather than punch holes and flip through. Although I do occasionally, some years, punch holes and flip through the IEP. It just sort of depends on what's going on that year and how big the IEP is. Will it fit into a plastic pocket protector? Okay. The next section would be after my current IEP. I do keep in there the current school year information. So that would be, you know, whatever back to school paperwork you get from the teachers. Usually in elementary school, that's like an welcome to our class. I'm Mrs. So-and-so, and this is what we're going to do for a year and blah, blah, blah. And so I keep all that information. I keep the school calendar there. I keep any upcoming events for the school, maybe the PTA information, all that kind of stuff. In secondary, that gets a little bit more extensive because your child has a different teacher for every subject matter. So you end up with a lot of like class syllabi, and things like that, which I like to keep right up there towards the front. Moving on, after the present year school information, I put in a section for progress reports and report cards, and I like to keep those together. And then I move on to standardized tests and evaluations. So as your child starts to get older, you're going to have more and more standardized tests. You have your DRA tests, you've got your SOL test scores, you've got your whatever evaluations they have. So I actually like to keep all that stuff together. I like the evaluations and the reevaluation information to be all together with the standardized tests, but I do group them by test type. Then moving on, I like to keep work samples towards the back of the IEP. I don't tend to access them as often, so I don't keep them anywhere near the front, but I have them in the back if something is something I want to hold on to or reference. And then behind that, I have the previous year's IEP. I tend not to carry all of my previous IEPs because at this point I would have 13 in a binder and my binder would be 10 inches wide. So I tend to just have the one immediately before the one that's current. So for reference. And then towards the very, very end, I have the students' rights and responsibilities, the current draft of that, whatever that might be. And actually something to keep your eye out is that the the student rights and responsibilities are being updated. And there are special education portions that have been looked at to be updated. And so it's always good to kind of review those and see how they've changed. And then at the very, very, very back, like Amanda, I have a research section, and that's for my own research. It's for interesting presentations or seminars that I've been to, or what have you. So those are my tabs, and I'm just going to do a quick check and make sure people can still hear me. Amanda, can you still hear me? Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how mine have changed a little bit. Okay, so I'm not going to show you too much because my kids would murder me, but I can say that in this one, I have somewhat different, very different tabs than I have in another year. So let's see. Sorry, you get, this is a big one. You can see all mine. It looks very similar to Amanda's. So in this one, I actually have a sheet full of labels as well, so I can change labels on my tabs. This one has standardized testing, report cards, IEPs, class information, related service tabs. So like I have an OT and speech tab, and I also have various handbooks. Oh, that's a good point. I didn't mention that. So if I have, let's say your child has dyslexia and you think the dyslexia handbook is a great resource, you might want to print out a handbook and have that in your binder for easy reference. So mine vary from year to year, but the general gist is the same. I tend to try to color code for different kids. So as you can see, this particular child is blue. My other child is a different color. I don't tend to keep much identifying information on the outside just for privacy, because if I'm carrying it around somewhere, I don't necessarily want people to see my kid's name, but that's just, yet again, personal preference. So that is basically the long and short of my system. It's slightly different from Amanda's. And I do have a picture, or not a picture, an example of an IEP and how I use those tabs on the side, like I mentioned. And I don't want anyone to be able to read too much, but I do a lot of highlighting and margin notes. I myself am actually dyslexic, so I find that I do a lot of margin notes, and I do a lot of highlighting of keywords and writing of keywords on the side. I have learned that it helps me over the years, but I actually think it's something that helps most people over the years. So I'm a big margin writer directly on the paper. And I think that's it for me, unless anyone has any questions about that, and then we can move on. Here we go. Oh, hey, it's me again. Year to year organization. I wasn't sure if I was doing this slide or not. Year to year organization. So information that you are going to want to carry over from year to year for sure. The current IEP. So whatever the current IEP is at the time of school ending the previous year, and then the beginning of school the next year, you want to put that current IEP in there. You want to put any ESY information and ESY progress reports in that current IEP, because what happened in the summer is going to affect what's going to happen in the fall. So you might want to carry over evaluations. Now, this can be really useful, especially in a reevaluation year. You might want to go back to your previous evaluations and bring those forward so that you're able to refer to them and see if there's growth, see if there's regression, see if there's new issues that have popped up or things that have wonderfully resolved. So you might want to carry those evaluations through year to year. I didn't, and there have definitely been times when I was like, oh, what year was that report in? And if I'd been carrying my evaluations through into every binder, it might have been easier for me to find. So in retrospect, I might have done that a bit differently, but there's also an advantage to going, that was second grade, I'm gonna go to the second grade binder, because I will tell you that I keep all my binders historically. Okay, medical provider information, that's gonna be, it might change over time, but largely the same from year to year, and you're going to want to just update and keep moving that forward. Now, things to store long term. There are lots of things that you don't need to keep with you all the time. It's just, you're going to break your back if you have too many papers. But historical IEPs, don't get rid of them. You can scan them and store them in your computer or on the cloud. But my husband would call me a pack rat, and I do like my paper copies, so I store all the paper copies of my previous IEPs. I never thrown one out. And that way I also have all the notes on there as well. So your previous IEPs, your communication logs, any data that's been taken, just keep all of that. You can keep it in binders and put the binders in storage bins or on a shelf. You can, I know some people put things in file cabinets the year it's over. They just take all the papers and put them in a file and put them in file cabinet. There's lots of different ways you can do that. As well as, obviously, if you're probably not as addicted to paper as I am, you probably want to keep them electronically on the cloud, or in your, on a thumb drive or on your computer. So Amanda, do you have anything to add to that section?
I just wanted to back you up and agree with you about especially keeping those old IEPs. I have had to go even now. Sorry, I keep not looking at the camera. I have gone back even now, even once she was in elementary school, to look at things that were talked about in preschool and create like a timeline of when we discussed things and when things went into effect, and having those past IEPs really helped with the backup information that I was trying to bring to the table. So definitely keep them. I just do a new binder every year, and I've got a Tupperware container. I just throw the binder in because I don't have the patience. But if you don't want to be buying a brand new 3-inch binder every year, like she said, file cabinet or just a banker's box, plastic or just the cardboard ones, and can throw in the information year to year and move on. All right, I think we are good. Michelle, from my understanding, has been answering questions as we've been talking. So, but if we do have any, we are going to move on to the talking about the IEP meetings themselves, tips for this whole virtual COVID place that we're all living right now. But if there are any other questions about about organization specifically, this would be the time to ask. Michelle, do we have anything?
I think we have been answering all the questions as they've come in. I don't see any unanswered questions right at this moment.
All right,
but
sounds
feel free to keep sending them in.
I think so. This next part, Michelle and Diane are going to take the lead, I think, on this portion of the meeting, and I'm going to kind of switch and go back behind the scenes. But this is what we're going to go through, some tips for preparing for the meeting, tips that you can use while you're in the meetings themselves, after the meeting is over, and then through what we can do during this time of pandemic fun. So Diane, take it away.
Okay, whoops, can you hear me? Oh, yes, you can. Alrighty, so we'll start kind of chronologically with being prepared. So of course, this is going to be pre-IEP meeting. And when you look at the handout that we've prepared, the handy tips for parents, that actually is much more in depth. There's a lot more on there than we have on the slides, but these are some of the hot ones that we really like to emphasize. So we put them on here, but refer to that handout for more tips. Of course, the one that is, it seems obvious, but it isn't always, is that you will want to request a draft of the IEP and ask that it be sent to you at least 3 days in advance, so you have time to look it over, so your partner or anybody else consulting on the IEP with you is able to look it over, think about it, make notes, do what you need to do to be prepared for the meeting. Teams don't always get it to you 3 days in advance. And sometimes it's good to be flexible, because the staff is incredibly busy and they have an extremely high number of IEPs, especially right now when the entire system is getting IEP addendums happening. You might not get it right away. Be flexible, but I do request and recommend rather that you at least have it enough in advance that you have time and are prepared from looking it over, that you can have an intelligent conversation without feeling rushed and pressured and not knowing what's going on. You have every right to be prepared in that meeting. I am a huge fan of recording meetings rather than trying to take copious notes. IEP meetings are highly charged and emotional. Everything involving our children can be emotional because they are our most precious gifts. So I find it very difficult to be a good recording secretary and pay attention to what people are saying to me, as well as remember what I'm trying to say. So I just recommend everyone just record a meeting and don't be afraid to. And if you record, just be aware that the school staff will also record. So you need to give them advance notice so that they have the technology available for them to also record. That way, you have a record, you can go back and listen, you can share it with another guardian or someone else on your team who might not have been there. Always, always, always record. You will want to, in advance, invite whatever specialists or advocate or private medical practitioner, therapist, whatever. You will want to invite them before the meeting. Think about who will be helpful to have there. Sometimes, especially in the beginning of the process, parents can feel really overwhelmed. If they haven't been to an IEP or a 504 meeting before, you walk in the door and there's all this staff and it feels like, oh my gosh, it's just me and all these other people and I'm totally overwhelmed. So you can invite anyone to be there. You can invite a family member, you can invite your best friend, you can invite a child's therapist. I always bring my daughter's dyslexia tutor with me because she's a genius, but also because she knows my daughter so well and can speak to the clinical needs very well. So just think about who would be helpful and comforting to have there on your team.
Diane,
and yes.
Before you go on to the next one, we have some questions coming up about how to record the meeting. And also, do you keep your recordings year after year?
Okay, so those are great questions. Yes, I do keep my recordings year after year. There have been times when I have erased them, but I tend to, in general, keep them. But as I said, I'm also a pack rat. But it's good to have a historical knowledge of what has occurred and what has been said. I mean, I just find it very helpful. I don't always listen.
How do you record it?
Okay, so how do you record it? It's a great question, especially right now. Typically, when you're in person in an IEP meeting, I would just say, put your iPhone down, tell everyone that you're recording, put it down in the middle of the table, and remind them to speak loudly enough for the audio to catch it. In COVID times, it's a little trickier. You can still record with an iPhone and make an audio memo. The other thing you can do is in Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, what I found is a little tricky is that I had headphones on in the meeting. So I wasn't able to record with an audio device on my end or use the recording controls. I wasn't sure how to record the entire meeting live. So I asked the team to please record it. And I then requested a copy be given to me. Now, some people, you know, if you were able to record it on your own, absolutely, I recommend that first and foremost, because then you have it immediately available to you. And you don't have to rely on going through many steps of them having to have the data transfer and then it's sent off to you. And, you know, mistakes can happen. So I would just say, if at all possible, record it with an audio device or on your computer if you have the ability to do that. And I think that answers the question. If you cannot record, another option is to, after the meeting, write down what you understand the meeting to have been about. So for example, we spoke about my child's case. These are the points we talked about. and this is what we agreed upon as a team. Does this match your recollection? So that, and send that to them in writing. And that way you have at least some sort of a record of what occurred at that meeting.
Diane, if I can, if you have a Windows computer, I do not know how this works on Mac as I don't have a Mac desktop, but on Windows, if you press the Windows key and G, the gaming recording will come up. That's what gamers use to record and broadcast when they're playing a game. So you can use that to record what's happening on your screen. I'm not entirely sure what it will do with the audio if you have headphones plugged in. So I would test it out before the meeting to see if you can have headphones plugged in, have something on YouTube that's playing audio even with your headphones plugged in, and see what comes back. But if you're not using headphones, I have done that, and I know that it will record both your spoken audio and what's coming out of the speakers. So that is an option.
That is an excellent tip that I did not know. It's so helpful to have somebody who knows these things. Yay, Amanda. So I'm going to try that next time. We'll see how it goes. Okay, I realize now I'm looking at the time, it's 7:59, so I need to talk a little faster. Obviously, you want to review your IEP, use whatever system, sticky notes, highlighters, margin notes works best for you so that you really know what's important and can get to it quickly at the day. And you want to make a written note of all of your questions and concerns, as well as your ideas. Sometimes you think, oh, this is a great question. And if you don't write it down, you will forget it, I promise you. And then you'll remember it at like 2 in the morning that night. And, you know, the other idea, and something that is very useful to do, is to interview your child before a meeting. And you can do this by sitting down, especially with a young child. You can sit down, you can interview them, you can transcribe their answers, and reading that to the IEP team. If your child is a little older, they actually might want to make a written statement that you then take to the meeting, or a video. I know some kids like to make videos of themselves speaking. And then as they get to where they're ready to self-advocate, they can actually come into the meeting themselves. But you're going to want to prepare your child, and you're want to prepare yourself and any other team member. You also want to be very clear about your expectations for, if you bring people in with you, how they're going to behave, who's going to be talking, who's going to be listening, who's going to be making notes, you know, that kind of thing. Because what you don't want to do is invite a bunch of people to the meeting and then have everybody talking and lose a lot of time. So those are my thoughts. Michelle or Amanda, if you have anything to add. All right, then we can move on to the next slide, which I think is Michelle.
Thank you. Yes. Give me a moment here to get myself oriented. Thank you. Okay, so looking more at in-meeting tips. Again, there are many more tips on the handy hints handout. Say that 3 times quickly. But running through some of them here. When you are in a meeting, always keep the student as the focus. It's really easy as parents to let our emotions and our needs interfere with keeping the student in focus, because we care so much about our students. So presume positive intent. The staff, people don't go into teaching and into special education for the money. They go into it because they love the work and they love the students. So it's really important to always go in presuming that everybody really does have your child's best interest in mind, and keep an open mind. Be realistic and reasonable. It's very easy to go in with a very long laundry list of things that you want to happen and sort of lose sight of what's really reasonable to happen and what is not. Again, always bring the focus back to the student. Take breaks when needed is another big one. Something that I really like doing actually is taking a break and taking just a 1 minute and just saying you just need a minute, step out of the room. And if you literally sit quietly for 1 minute, and that was something I was thinking about doing for all of us during this meeting, because we're connecting in with so many people here. If you just take 1 minute and close your eyes and breathe, 1 minute can feel like a really long time, and it's just what you need to help calm and refocus. So take those breaks if you feel your emotions rising up and starting to get agitated. Finally, never sign in the same day. Never. Even if you're 100% sure that you love your IEP, it is not offending the team to say, I would like to take this home with me and give it some thought. You can take it home. You can share it with a friend, with a partner, with a neighbor, with another parent through our SEPTA group, and get other people's opinions, reread everything that has come up, look for any mistakes, but definitely don't sign right then at the meeting. And we're going to get into talking about partial consent in a little bit as well. And Diane, we'll switch back to you.
Okay. This is after the meeting, post-meeting tips. Michelle just covered the start of one of them, which is to go home and just sleep on it. Again, even if it's the best IEP in the world and you're absolutely thrilled, I know it has happened to me. I will get home, I'll fall asleep, and they'll be like, oh, I forgot to ask. Oh, I need to clarify X, Y, Z. And so if I just give myself a little time, I can remember to ask in the morning through an email or whatever. So sleep on it. Again, follow up in writing with the IEP team. I really recommend this. To what Michelle said, people do special education, people do education because they care about students. You're not going to get famous and you're not going to make a lot of money doing it. It's a hard job. And I think even when things get tense, or even if people don't always agree, you may not see eye to eye. But I think one thing that's important to remember is that everyone at the table is a human being doing their best that they can do. And so if you can follow up and say thank you, and just remember to treat everybody as being on the same team rather than opposing teams, I think it just will help everybody. Not to say that everything is perfect. There are things that can go wrong, but if you start from a place of openness, it tends to take you on a better journey. Yes, afterwards, you will always want to clarify any remaining questions that you have, or if there's a correction, if something isn't noted properly in the plot page, or it's not what you remember, clarify that before you sign. Remember, you can do partial consent. In the state of Virginia, you can partially agree to parts of the IEP. And what this means is that you would very clearly write in the confirmation part of the IEP, that where you put your signature, you would say, I give partial consent as noted. And then you want to say what you agree to and what you don't agree to. And you can go back through the body of the IEP and you can initial what you agree with and not a note where you do not agree. So that can be incredibly useful if you get to an impasse as a team, because it will help your child be able to get whatever services you agree on and not have to revert completely to an old IEP, or not have to wait on a new service that everyone agrees on until everything else is resolved. So it is absolutely perfectly okay to give partial consent. And remember, if you finish your IEP meeting and things are just not quite progressing the way you were hoping, or you for any reason feel that you need to meet again as a team, you can always, as a parent, call a new IEP meeting. You do not have to wait for the annual the annual meeting every year. You can call one at any time. So just remember that. Do you have anything to add there, Michelle?
No, I do not. I mean, we could talk about this all night long.
The only thing that I wanted to add is that that final IEP page can look confusing because it only gives you the option to sign in consent or not in consent. I have actually in the past, I have signed the consent sign, but underneath I write, I sign in consent with the understanding that this is what I agree with, this is what I don't.
I have done similarly, because there is not a third line that says partial consent. Somebody did ask, how often do I think people sign with partial consent? And at least my opinion is probably not often at all. Amanda, Diane, I don't know if you know any more about that.
I've done it a couple of times, especially when we were first coming into from ITC into preschool, and my daughter was nonverbal, and the first suggestion that the first services we were offered was 1 hour of speech a month. We agreed with virtually everything else, but not for 15 minutes a week for a nonverbal 3-year-old. So we signed in partial consent and came back to the table as often as we needed to get the services to where we wanted them to be before we signed. So, and we've had to do that a couple of times over the years. So definitely don't ever hesitate.
The question as well about if you give partial consent, is it back to the drawing board? Yes and no. Whatever you consent to, that is your new IEP going forward. So it may be back to the drawing board to then work on the pieces that you don't consent to. It's just really going to depend on your individual situation, I think. So you don't even need to write in a third line, just you can sign I consent, and then you handwrite underneath that, I am giving partial consent to blah, 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 and go from there. I don't, oh, go ahead.
One other question about where can we find consent guidelines based on the state we live in?
I don't know the answer to that one.
That is a really good question. I would think if you went to your state's Department of Education, that would be a really good place to start. And also, Google is a magical thing, but you want to make sure that you're taking advice from a reliable source, because there's a lot of junk out there too. So I would recommend you go to your state Department of Education, as well as your state. Every state should have a parent education center. Each state might call it something different. In Virginia, it's called PETSI, Parent Education Advocacy Training Center. So you can also look into that organization, and they should be able to help you.
One other place that might be helpful is Rights Law. I know they have a lot of that information, and Rights Law is a good, reliable resource. So yes. I believe it's just rightslaw.com, WRIGHTSLAW.com.
I think we have them on the slides at the end. I think they're one of the links as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw these up here because these, I always recommend them to everybody. Really helpful books that will give you lots of background information in a way that's easy to understand.
So moving into knowing your rights, and these are some tips related in general, but particularly to our situation that we are in right now. I do want to preface this by saying Diane, Amanda, and I are not lawyers. So we are not sharing this information to you with a legal voice. We are parents, and we have many years of experience, but we are not lawyers. So,
and no one on our team has provided any kind of legal.
That is correct.
Along those lines. This was created by Diane. The slide is created by Diane and Michelle and myself, and that's it.
Okay. So there will be links at the end to Rights Law, but those books are written by the rights of Rights Law. So moving on to your rights for which books are those? Diane, your image is up. Can you just hold up the titles really close?
Oh, sure. I didn't know I was still on camera.
I believe you might be, but that's okay. I'll be the voice from behind the curtain.
It's a good thing I didn't do anything terribly embarrassing.
You need to mute yourself when you're not talking, Diane.
Oh, golly. Sorry about that, guys. So I don't know if you can see those books, but they're written by Pete Wright and co-written with his wife. And he is a very well-known special education lawyer who is actually now retired and has dedicated his life to training parents. So these are the books.
Okay, so let's move on to some of these specifics for now. Number one, most important, well, they're all really important, very important for you to know though, is that the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, that's our federal legislation, all about special ed, that dictates the days for timelines, the number of days that the school has to complete an IEP, for example. There's multiple timelines. Those timelines have not been waived. So even though our schools were not having kids there in person for the spring, the timelines are still in effect and the clock is still ticking. So if your child is past due for an evaluation, technically the school system is in non-compliance with that timeline. We are aware that some parents received letters from the school system saying, given, I didn't get one, so I didn't see it personally, but essentially it said that I, the parent, am waiving the 65-day timeline. I'm not an attorney. I can't say if that's legal or not, but it sure didn't make me comfortable when I heard about it. So I would guess it's probably not exactly kosher. So if you did sign one of those documents, feel free to reach out to the school and ask if you would like to rescind it, because the federal guideline and the federal timeline is the federal timeline. And then, of course, document everything. So if you make a phone call about that, send a follow-up email saying, thank you very much for taking my call on this date when I asked you this and you answered me that. And now you have written documentation of your phone call. As well, it has been made clear by Virginia that parent observations can and should be playing into decisions about the new IEPs and eventually about what is typically called compensatory services, but right now in this situation is being called recovery rather than compensatory services. So what you have observed at home since our kids have not been in school is really important. You have seen any regression that your student has had. You've also hopefully seen any progress that your student has had. But that information is important to get documented on the PLOP page, the present level of performance page of the IEP. So that's one more reason not to sign any IEP without reviewing the whole thing, because you want to make sure that any information you have shared is going into that PLOP page. Virtual should not be an impediment to services and accommodations. If your child needs in-person schooling, that is a decision for the IEP team. And the next point down, Virginia DOE has not said that special ed students cannot return to school. And that was too many negatives. So saying that the other way, Virginia Department of Education has said that special ed students can return to school. So that is something, again, that your team needs to discuss and your team needs to decide. You certainly can cite that Virginia Department of Education says that special ed students can be back in school. The tip before that about beware of service hours reductions. We've also been hearing a lot of discussion in our Facebook groups about people whose service hours have been significantly cut. If your child needs 10 hours of services a week, your child's needs have not reduced. School hours have reduced. So please stick your ground and let school know what your child needs. Also, we've been hearing that parents have been told that the team has to meet by, I think tomorrow, by the 3rd, and that the meeting is going to happen whether the parent is there or not. That also is not okay, and that's part of your parent rights. The staff are actually required to include parents in the meetings, and they're not allowed to meet without the parent unless they can show documentation that they've made significant effort to involve parents and haven't been able to persuade parents to attend. They have to give you sufficient notice of meetings. They have to schedule the meeting for times and locations that are mutually agreed upon. They can't just say, we need you to meet with us at this date at this time, and not allow you, the parent, to give input into this decision.
Michelle.
So, yes, Amanda.
If I can, I also just want to add that it's important to remember that teachers aren't necessarily the ones crafting these messages.
Correct.
They may be the ones delivering them, but they're not necessarily crafting them themselves. So I think it's really important for us all to have a little grace for our teachers right now, because we're all kind of in situations we don't have a whole lot of control over at the moment.
Absolutely so. Yes, this is definitely messaging coming from above. So don't shoot the messenger, so to speak. looking at also requesting creative accommodations. Now is the time to put on your creative hat and think about what your child needs and what you can do in this virtual environment. I see that we have a question about how can you get services with virtual schooling, and we can come back to that as well. I'm curious to know what kind of services. But in terms of creative accommodations, it might be, for instance, something we did with one of my kids. My child was finding that it was, with their ADHD, it was very tedious to be filling in lots of forms and to show that she had been watching some videos, and then she just got really frustrated with the whole assignment. And so we put an accommodation in for her to demonstrate mastery in various ways. So we left it a little bit open and vague, and with different teachers, we did different things. For some of them, I just sent an email saying, we discussed this topic and she understands it. For some of them, she maybe demonstrated understanding by solving 2 math problems or something like that. So it's time to be creative. Also, school is right around the corner. If you need any equipment for your child and you have not heard from school about getting it, please reach out to assistive technology or the occupational or physical therapists from your schools to get that equipment on hand so that you have it and you're ready to go for the start of school day. So it could be any kind of computer information, particular apps. We're hearing that some things may be preloaded on the FCPS laptops, but we don't have clarification on exactly what is on them.
So Michelle, I did look back at some notes that I had made, and we know that the word was that preloaded is the ability to access speech to text, text to speech, and predictive reading. And there may be other things as well that are available. However, I'm not exactly sure, and I have written for clarification from central office about how parents and students can get training on those programs and access those programs. They're in the FCPS cloud. Every computer does have access, but how you actually make that happen is something we don't have a step-by-step guide yet. We've requested it, and as soon as we have it, we will post it on our website and social media. But in the meantime, you can go to your school-based technology specialist and ask them. You can also, and maybe most importantly, reach out to assistive technology specialists and have them help you figure that out. But it is available to every student in FCPS. So it's about making sure we figure out how to do that before school starts. So.
And that kind of equipment, particularly things like from the OT or the PT, if your child needs specific grips for a pen or pencil, if they need special scissors, if they need a weighted blanket or fidgets or a special piece to chew on or a little air cushion, I call them wiggle seats, if they need something like that, reach out for that now. The school will make arrangements either for the equipment to be dropped off to you or for you to meet up with someone to get a handoff, but it is definitely important for you to get that stuff on hand so that your child is able to participate.
Michelle, I just want to put one more plug in for ATS because I have seen parents in local groups talk about going out and buying a touchscreen computer or a touchscreen laptop, tablet. That is something that ATS can provide if the child needs it in order to access virtual schooling. So if your child is of need of that and you have not already bought one personally, please reach out to ATS because they can help you.
Absolutely. And I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, and my middle schooler had her virtual orientation today, and her special ed teacher was asking all of her students, does anybody need those seats, those special seats that we had in our classroom? If you do, let us know, or have your parent let us know. And they were ready to drop it off at our house if we needed it. So by all means, touch base with even last year's teacher to find out what kinds of pieces of equipment your child used in class last year. You might not know all the different things that your child was accessing. And then put in those requests. And I apologize for my dog trying very hard to come in and join me in the program. We can jump ahead to the next slide as well.
Okay.
Michelle, before we move on, we do have a question. We had a follow-up from the services question. Somebody said they were supposed to have IA support for an in-person classroom. So how does that translate, or how can that translate to virtual?
That is a million-dollar question, in my personal opinion. And I think that it's all going to just depend on the student and on their needs. Because it could be such a broad range of reasons for having that IA. I can speak from personal experience that my child will have an IA. Joining the classroom teachers, my child is twice exceptional and is taking advanced classes, but then also has some significant needs as well, and does not have team taught classes, but that IA will be popping in, will be private messaging with my student, potentially meeting my student in breakout space. But it truly depends, because the range is so huge as to what kind of needs kids have.
We have one more question specifically about the ATS information that we just shared, how to showcase that our child needs a touchscreen. My daughter requires a touchscreen, so we just went through this process. All I did was reach out to the assistive technology representative for her school. They are different than the SBIT, just so that everybody is aware. So if you go to your school's website and go to the staff directory, type in assistive technology, and it should come up with the name of the employee that is handling that for your school. Unfortunately, most of the schools are no longer publishing the email addresses directly on the website due to spam issues with bots reading and giving teachers lots of spam. But there is a portal link that you can, if you don't already have the email address for the ATS representative, you can fill out that portal and it will go to their email and they'll be able to connect with you back. But in terms of showcasing why you need it, I would just write an email to them and explain what your child's limitations are with accessing a typical laptop and tell them we need accommodations.
Amanda, I do want to jump in and just offer one piece of clarification also from a little bit earlier when we were talking about that 65-day timeline that has not been waived. If it is okay to extend the 65-day timeline, but it needs to be by mutual agreement. So again, if you're okay with extending it, not a problem, but it cannot be unilaterally decided to be extended. You need to mutually agree on that. Yeah, Diane, we're game to go ahead there.
Yeah, I was just about to jump in. I had to unmute myself. But you know, what Michelle was just saying is actually true of any change. You know, if you actually feel that your child actually may not need a certain service or accommodation in the virtual environment, that's okay. You can agree to not do it anymore. You don't have, but likewise, you might have a kid who actually needs more accommodations in the virtual environment. The point here is not nickel and diming over how many specific hours. It's more about remembering to keep the kids focused. The child needs the focus, not limitations of staffing or building locations be the reason that services and accommodations are changed. And so we're going to start wrapping up with additional links that might be useful for you. So I'm going to make it bigger on my screen so I can talk through this. But learn from an expert. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Hank Millward, I believe this is the Hank Millward because it doesn't actually say.
This is the Hank Millward Q&A.
Yeah.
This Q&A is also available on SEPTA's homepage at the moment on the sidebar.
Yep. actually, I can't actually see the names of what all these different things are, but here's a page of links for you that will be helpful moving forward. Obviously, you can see they're divided by expert presentations versus accommodations for virtual learning and technology links. So peruse those at your leisure. They will also be available on our website and when we follow up with everything posting from this presentation.
And we will also make sure to put these links on the link that everybody was sent out in your emails for the Eventbrite. It's fairfaxcountysepta.org, and it's under the event tab, and then there's SEPTA event live streams, 2020, 2021 live streams. We will add it to that page, all of these links to that page as well.
Looking ahead, we're going to jump into Q&A. If there's any more questions. I do see one of, is a school-based technology specialist the same as the assisted technology person? No. Amanda, would you like to be a little bit more specific on this one?
No, they are not. The school-based technology specialist serves the entire school. They are the ones who are the tech specialists, the IT support for the school building. Assistive technology is specifically for needs in terms of access. Whether or not a child can access the technology or needs so some assistive technology resources would be things like if a child needed speech to text accommodations, or Diane, I believe there are some dyslexia accommodations for AT as well. The assistive communication device that my daughter uses also falls under ATS. The technology specialist will help the ATS person with any needs that the physical device itself has, but in terms of the software and the implementation and how to help the accommodations, that's the department of the assistive technology person. So I hope that helps to explain that a little bit better. We also have another question in the chat of, my child is starting kindergarten. How do I know what IT is best suited for him? We've been provided the standard Dell laptop. It wasn't discussed because it hasn't been used in a school setting before. Do either of you guys want to take that?
I think a lot of that's really going to depend on the student's personal needs. What the nature of the disability is there a physical disability issue? Is it an issue of being able to actually physically use the laptop, or is it more of an issue of attention? So I think we might need a little bit more clarification on that. Michelle, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think the answer to that question is something that actually is something that I know I've struggled with over the years. I do have 3 kids who are twice exceptional who have received services since Child Find or infant and toddler all the way through the end of high school. And one thing that I've discovered is I didn't know, and I still don't know what I don't know. So for the question about, what kind of services is my kindergartner going to need, that in some ways it's a really hard question to ask and to answer because I don't know all the possibilities that are out there. And that's something that I know I've struggled with. So, just the fact that you're learning that assistive technology is an option in Fairfax County is a great way to start and to reach out and communicate with them about what kind of options are out there. Knowing that there are behavior intervention specialists in the school system who you can call on when you need help with behavior issues. You learn about these things, unfortunately, not always from your school team. And so that's part of why we want to bring presentations like this to you tonight, so that you can learn about these people. That the very last link on that links page that says keep up with technology is a really nice spreadsheet of just different kinds of programs that are out there that you can be accessing that help you do different things. And I know that that's very, very vague, but click on it and you'll see what I'm talking about. All schools do not have an ATS person. ATS, Assistive Technology, is a centralized office. So they come out to your school. Your school will have an SBIT, school-based technology.
School-based technology specialist.
Specialist, thank you. But ATS is more centralized.
I do want to clarify that just a little bit, Michelle.
Yep.
All schools are assigned an ATS person. There is not one ATS person per school. Each ATS person probably handles anywhere from 10 to 15 schools, depending on the caseload need. So your school should have an assigned assistive technology person. If you can't find them on the website, I would reach out to your case manager or your principal and find out who that person is and what their email address is.
And even then, when you're talking with ATS, it's tough to know all the options. I think I once asked somebody from ATS, can you give me a list of all the different programs that you have available so that we can sort of have it like a menu and pick and choose what might be helpful? And the answer I got was no. So it's really tough, again, when you don't know what you don't know, and it does take doing research to find out what is out there. And that's a place where we would say, as much as you can, connect with other parents to find out who has similar situations and what different kids have used also. And honestly, your school-based staff won't necessarily know either, because there's such a wide range of options that are out there and available. So give your school staff grace, as Amanda said, that they may not know all the resources, but you can certainly do your part by asking the right questions. And if they don't know, my hope is that they will say, I don't know, but let's find out together. Any other questions for us to tackle tonight?
I'm just going to jump in on that last one too and say, I have found if the school-based, everybody cannot be the master of all domains. You can't know everything about everything. So I also think it's perfectly fine if the school staff doesn't quite know, or you sense that there might be some confusion about the need, to go above. I mean, we have a lot of specialists in Fairfax County, so you can go above to a PSL, but you can also go directly to a specialty department. So you can go directly to look online and find directly who the contact person is for assistive technology, or who the dyslexia specialist is for the county or the region. So same with like psychology, same with OT and PT. So you don't feel that you're stuck with the school, but it's always the best place to start is with the school. And I hope that clarifies. And the other thing, just to parents in general, you're not going to know everything either, and that's okay. If you're even on this presentation, it means you're working really hard for your kid, and all of us are working hard, and we've all had a huge learning curve. And so give yourself some grace also.
Absolutely. Some of the questions that have also rolled in, who is your case manager? So shout out, thank you, Anne-Marie Ward, for jumping in with the answer to that. Your case manager is one of your child's special ed teachers. It's the individual who's responsible for handling all their paperwork. So it's most likely going to be their primary special education teacher. But depending on what kind of services your child gets, they may or may not be getting a lot of direct special ed education from a special educator. Seeing Anne-Marie's name also just reminds me, there have been questions about, I'm learning all of these terms for the first time. So for example, Diane referenced your PSL, it's your procedural service liaison. That's somebody who is higher up for your whole school pyramid, whose role is to make sure that all of the procedures are being followed correctly, and they're the person who your school teams turn to when they have specific questions, but you can also reach out to them directly. And in terms of other resources that are out there, for example, there's the ACSD, which is the Advisory Committee for Students with Disabilities. In every other school system in the state of Virginia, it's called something different. It's called a SEAC, but Fairfax is special. I don't know why. We call it the ACSD. It is a state mandated organization, committee that has representatives from the various pieces of the disability community, and every school board member appoints somebody. And plus that, for example, there's a SEPTA rep, there's a representative from multiple other places and organizations. They have meetings on a monthly basis, and we publicize their meetings on our SEPTA website as well, and they are open to the public where you can go in and give testimony, but it's also just one more opportunity to connect with the higher ups in the county as well. Any other questions there, Amanda?
Yes, Michelle, we do. One quick adjustment is a procedural support liaison. And for anybody who needs to find who their PSL is for their school, there is a list on Fairfax on SEPTA's website under resources, and then under FCPS resources, and then contact information, and it'll take you to a page that has procedural support liaisons by school. We also thank you, Anne Marie, again for the case manager information. As you said, it's different in elementary and secondary. So yeah, in elementary, it's probably just the main special education teacher that you have. And we have evaluations in the binder. Is that medical or something done at school along with progress reports?
I think that just depends on your kiddo and your way that you organize your binder. I had put in the chat that I personally keep all of my kids' medical reports in a completely separate binder. So it really just depends on your child and your personal preference.
Yep, and then we have one more. Does anyone track special education qualifications year to year? We have a new special ed teacher this year, and she isn't trained in the same intervention systems that my child has been successful with.
That is a good question, Diane. Do you know the answer to that?
You all couldn't hear me giggling in the background when that question was asked. So,
we don't work for the school system.
We don't work for the school system. On a personal basis, you can certainly ask about your team every year and what programs they're familiar with. You can also request from staff that if a program had been working, that the staff member be trained in that program so that your student can continue it. It's not a guarantee, but it's definitely something you can request. And aside from that, we can't really speak to how things are staffed.
I will say, and if a teacher says, for example, I'm not really trained in that same intervention system, depending on what the system is, your teacher can learn it on the fly if they have to. I'm a former LD teacher, and my mantra was I just need to be one day ahead of my students. And sometimes when I was first starting out, that's all I was. But programs, for example, like Unstuck and Untarget, my child's special ed teacher in elementary school was not familiar with it, but I was, and I knew that it would be a really great program for my kiddo. She was able to get a hold of the materials and literally learn it one lesson ahead before my daughter. And it actually ended up being a win-win because now she is more familiar with it to use with other kiddos as well. Or for example, I'm drawing a blank now, but there's definitely other programs out there where teachers can at least get an overview of it and learn it as you go. But it just depends on the program, of course. You wouldn't say that for like Orton Gillingham, for example, that you need more specific training for.
That was going to be my interjection. There are programs and interventions that actually do require a high level of training in order to be even legally administered by someone, because that has to do with the licensing agreement between the county and the provider of the resource, like a Wilson Reading Program. They may have to be trained in a specific program in order for them to use it. So just be aware of that. Yeah.
We have a question about, do PSLs work with all grade levels in the pyramid? They are a central administrative position, and they oversee the entire pyramid from top down or bottom up, however you want to look at it. But they are not directly working with your students. They are more administrative, supporting the school staff and parents as need be.
We had Anne Marie shared the next ACSD meeting. That's the Advisory Committee for Students with Disabilities that Michelle was talking about. They happen on the second Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. They usually run from about 7 to 9. So September's is Wednesday, September 9th. It starts at 7 p.m. They're all virtual right now. It is a different link than most of the virtual meeting links are right now. There's some kind of, it ends in streaming meeting. Anne-Marie, if you have the direct link to that, I couldn't find it. If you have the direct link to that, if you could share it in the chat, we will make sure to get that shared on the website as well for quick access. And then I think we had one more. Oh, we had a question about whether or not there are newsletters for SEPTA that keep everyone connected. We do have an email list. It is used mostly for event announcements and any other really important like advocacy announcements, calls to action, things like that. So if you go to fairfaxcountysepta.org, there on the right-hand side, there is a sidebar and there is a link to sign up for our mailing list right there. And you will also find other important information gets up on that sidebar for easy access all the time. So
and also, I'll jump in here too and make a plug for volunteers. We did have a newsletter in years past. It's something that actually took a lot of work and kind of faded out over time. If you are interested in a newsletter and you have a passion for it, we love having volunteers. So you could come on board to the communications committee and talk to the communications chair and see if that's something that she would be interested in working on with you. And you could open up a whole new world of volunteering for yourself. So I love the idea of a newsletter. It just takes hours to do.
Amanda, if you can maybe put up the slide with our social media accounts as well, for us to be wrapping up also. Honestly, especially right now, things have been changing so quickly that by the time we got any newsletter out, it would already be old news and it would probably be new and different. Whether you're a Facebook user or not, I would suggest highly that you hook in with our Facebook groups. I do have a friend who created a Facebook account just for SEPTA, and I think has actually limited to using it just for SEPTA, so kudos to her. But really connecting with other parents and saying, I was told this, does that sound right to you? That's really a way to go. And by joining in with us tonight, you're certainly taking steps to connect with other parents and share ideas and ask questions. I think not being afraid to ask for help and saying this is really hard to another parent opens up a lot of doors for you that you maybe weren't expecting were there. So we're really glad that you joined us this evening. Diane or Amanda, anything else to add in as we wrap up?
Are we going to do the giveaways?
I think that what I said at the beginning is we're going to notify people by email.
Okay, are we going to pull names live or anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, that's not a problem. Just wanted to make sure.
But they will be randomly generated. It's not,
yes.
Just so people know.
So again, thank you very much. Please feel free to join SEPTA if you enjoyed this program this evening. We would love to have you as a member so that we can count your head when we go out and say we have X number of members. We have hundreds, I want to say thousands at this point of people in our Facebook groups, but our membership numbers do not necessarily reflect that. So please feel free to join SEPTA and connect with us. And we thank you very much for spending your evening with us and wish you all the best of luck for you and your kiddos going into next week. We are all on this roller coaster together. So thanks very much for joining us. Have a good night, everybody.